My dad died and I'm scared my family won't get along. So yesterday after my dad comes home he eats what my mom made for him. Eggs and Spam. To be clear, he has a pre-existing medical history of high blood pressure and gout. First found out when he was admitted to the hospital in 2015 when he fell ill, and we basically had to force him to go to the hospital BC he didn't want to go. He was put on medication since, with changes to them maybe a year or so ago. So back to when after he ate. My half-sister heard a thud around 740-ish and told me to check BC. She thought maybe my parents are arguing. I go down and see my dad on the kitchen floor my mom behind him a few feet away and I hear him snoring. I ask my mom a question, get worried, run back upstairs and knock on my sister's door. She calls my other sister and also tells me to stop wasting time, call 911. I was scared and frantic. I wish I called 911 or saw him when he came in so I could maybe have called sooner. They get frantic too and we all start yelling at each other and I try to maintain order also as I'm talking to 911 person. At some point in all of this my brother-in-law yells for help and I help him turn my dad onto his side. BC he said he could choke on his saliva. My dad stops snoring and we start panicking. The EMS tells us how to perform CPR but my sisters keep yelling and so I try to get them working together. They finally start working on it. One is doing compression and the other giving him air and sometimes rotating. Fire department and ambulance gets here and they start doing the same thing but also have defibrillators and honestly, I'm just in shock still. It was maybe 8:03 p.m. when they came or so, I don't remember, it's all a blur. I checked my phone for timestamp, but I called twice so I forgot when original call was placed. They called it at 8:50 p.m. and I just began to lose it. My aunt comes and my sister is trying to call my dad's work to let his bosses know. We talk about how we want my dad's arrangements and agree on cremation. BC we don't have the money for anything else but also my sister wants the remains. My mom is bipolar schizophrenic and my sisters and bro-in-law don't get along. Her because of a whole history that would keep you here forever if I tried to type it. My dad was a bad person but he still chose us and tried his best to provide regardless of his fallacies. He had my mom's back too, saying he wouldn't kick her out or place her in a mental home. My sisters kinda want that, I think, but I'm scared to talk about it. My mom is okay sometimes but also acts up BC of her mental illness sometimes, and my dad and I were her constants regardless of what happened. My mom is old and still wants to benefit from some social security services that my dad had, but my sisters and I think we should get a majority control of his account. There's a lot of renovations to be done. BC he ignored upkeep of the house for a number of years, example, the roof. My mom is not very sad about the ordeal. BC she had a long history of mental abuse from my dad and I understand, but we for some reason stayed together. It how to move forward except for one moment at a time and I'm still waiting for funeral home to come pick up his body. It's 8:13 a.m. now, been waiting since night before. And I have been crying but also I can't sleep and I'm sorry if this doesn't meet guidelines. I just need to vent even though I told a few friends. I'm still in disbelief. How this will moving forward. I believe it can though. But it's hard to stay positive. I believe it started when I was around 6 years old. My parents often had friends over in the house. I didn't know they were polyamorous OFC. One day I was outside playing, got hurt, and when I ran inside caught my parents making out with some random guy. They told me they have other adults that they love and it's a completely normal thing. Me being a child just accepted that. They gave up being secretive and their partners would constantly be around, even joining on outings. I remember that on my 10th birthday they invited 3 of their partners, one of who I'd never seen before. And for the rest of the day my parents just withdrew from my party and hung out with them. I never saw them doing anything explicit again, but they would kiss their partners, hug them, make flirty comments. Something that would be normal between parents but with many more people. Sometimes I came home from school and my parents were gone and there was some random adult in our house. Some of them seemed surprised that my parents even had a child. I always hated it, but since my parents had told me this was normal, I assumed many adults probably did similar things and that it's just an adult thing all kids hate. Later they had less partners and eventually seemed to stop. Not that I'd know for sure. BC I moved out with 17. I didn't think about it anymore. A year ago I started therapy, other reasons. As usual, the topic of my upbringing came up and it brought back many feelings I wasn't aware of. I realized that although my parents were always good to me, I had never really felt close to any of them and still have a lot of resentment that they made me feel like I had to compete for my parents' attention with random strangers. A while ago, I visited them and they told me they are going to take part in a documentary about polyamorous families, and that the producers would like to include interviews with the children. So they would love if I could agree and tell everyone that polyamory doesn't mess kids up. All my resentment bubbled up and I said that I cannot agree because I would not be able to say anything positive. My parents looked shocked. I had never brought this up before, and asked why, and I unloaded all, that I always felt pushed aside. We barely had any family time without strangers intruding. It turned into an argument and I became loud and yelled that the truth is it did me up and they shouldn't have had a child. My mother cried and my father said I should probably leave. So I left and was shaken up for the rest of the week, but also felt regret because I've never made my mom cry before. Later my father sent me a message that was like, "We are sorry you feel that way. Can we have a calm discussion about this soon?" Even though I tried to, it's like I can't reply. This argument brought something very emotional up in me. I am a 36 years old female, and I have always been into jewelry. I used to own a variety of jewelry sets, but due to unfortunate circumstances, most of them had to go so I could afford rent after I lost my job. My husband never got lucky to land a job since 2013. Thankfully now I have a stable job that gets us by from month to month. I also kept one set of jewelry which is the most valuable whether momentarily and / or sentimentally, since it's part of family heirloom. The set includes a pair of earrings, a bracelet and a necklace. All gold material, and again they are worth decent amount of money. My brother-in-law has been with then-girlfriend for 10 years and they recently got married. It was a huge deal for the family. My husband wanted to get them a decent wedding gift and tried borrowing money from friends and neighbors but got turned down. He kept stressing out about it for weeks, and just the other day, the wedding was days prior and the groom and bride are off to their honeymoon, I discovered that my jewelry set was gone. I freaked after my husband nonchalantly said he gifted it to his brother's wife as a wedding gift. I was fuming. I asked how could he, and he replied that he had no money and nothing of value to give the newlyweds, and besides that set has been sitting in the closet since July 2019 and I never wore any piece of it, so he figured I'd forgotten about it, but he said he'll figure a way to pay me, or get me a similar one once he starts working, but I very loudly told him absolutely not and gave him 3 days. Just 3 days to return the set or I'll stop paying for everything in the apartment. He looked puzzled like he couldn't believe I was serious. He said he doesn't want to cause an issue, but I said it's already there, and if he doesn't want issues all he has to do is contact his brother or his wife and retrieve the set or go get it himself. He tried to twist the argument and offer the same solutions as mentioned above, but I refused. I said I just want my set back and he has 3 days only. He kept talking about how tasteless and disrespectful it'd be for him to retrieve a wedding gift, and said this will damage his relationship with his brother and family, and also how impossible it was to retrieve the set in 3 days, when the couple are on their honeymoon in another country. He said I was financially abusing him by threatening to stop paying for anything knowing I'm the breadwinner. Also, he refused to give me their new contact info to retrieve the set myself. My twin sister, May, and I are identical. At the end of our first year of college, I was in a car accident, and I ended up with a facial scar and major trauma. I started seeing a therapist because of the nightmares and the fact that I was panicking anytime I got into a car. That led to me realizing there were some deeper issues, which we worked on. As part of that work, I got a physical. Started working with a dietitian to fix my diet and the smorgasbord of vitamin deficiencies it caused. I started working out, strength training 3 days and sprints or hit on 3 with our older sis. By the end of our first year of college, we had each gained about 30 pounds. By the end of the next year, I had lost half of it, but I was smaller at 134 pounds than my previous 120 because of the muscle mass. And that's been my size for the past half-decade. I found a new beautician, and she gave me long layers to make my natural curls be curls instead of waves of frizz I always wanted but that my old one said would look bad and refused. I stopped bleaching it and let it go its natural dark blonde / light brown. I stopped spray tanning. Again, that's been my look for the past 5 years. I live in a rural area, and the internet isn't great. Things like FaceTime just aren't options, and I can't post a lot of pics on social media /c of it. This is relevant because a big issue is that May didn't see me over the quarantine. We talked on the phone a couple times a week, but it mostly revolved around her wedding planning. She got engaged before the Rona put us on lockdown. I wasn't her mo, so mostly I was being told decisions, not involved in the process. When it came to the bridesmaids' dresses, May sent our sister, SIL, and me a link and told us to get it in our size. Same with hair and makeup, but we had to arrange for a beautician because May's wouldn't do more than 4. And she wanted her friends at the appointment with her. Except she didn't do a bachelorette party with us, she did with her friends, or rehearsal dinner. So May didn't see any of us until the start of the wedding. She was livid. Apparently, she thought we would have stopped working out because of the Rona, even though we did it at home. Or that we would have stopped when she announced her engagement, so we didn't upstage her. She was mad because I didn't try to hide my scar and didn't tan, thought it would be implied. She made several snide remarks before throwing a drunk temper tantrum at the reception, basically accusing the 3 of us. But me of trying to upstage her. I don't have that excuse /c. I was a DD so sober, but I, quite famously, have a low tolerance for angry or crying drunks. I told her, if you're so insecure, you should have got off your ass instead of expecting us to lay on ours to make yours look better. It only got worse. Our family is on my side /c. I didn't start it or do anything. But his family and her friends are giving me shit.